Hi guys, Tiffany here, and this is the very first video I am making transitioning from the Tuesday lives into an actual physical video. So I was doing Tuesday lives where I was answering questions and then sharing all of my fan pictures that were sent into me via a slideshow. Now this is going to be basically the same exact thing. I'm going to start with answering a bunch of questions that were sent in to me, and then at the end of this video I have put together a beautiful slideshow compiled of a bunch of work that was sent in to me, and I'm super excited to share it. It's quite extensive. The more people are getting to know my slideshows, the more pictures I'm getting sent, and just seeing all of your work is so exciting. There's such talent, and I get so excited, and just even I'm so happy that people would even want to share these pictures with me, because it just makes me feel a part of your process, and I'm so proud of all of you and everything that you do, and I am really happy that I can share your work with everybody too. So that's super special. So please stay tuned to the end of this video and watch through to see if maybe your picture was included in the slideshow. All right, so I did reach out. If you're curious how to get questions to me, how to get pictures to me, I did reach out to my community on YouTube, and I put a question, a little question reaching out, like, do you have questions, in the community tab of my channel. If you are subscribed to my channel and get notifications, you would have received a notification that I asked this question. Otherwise, you can constantly refer back to my community tab to see if I've asked any questions to the community. And then I also reached out to my Instagram and Facebook, so I have questions pulled from all sorts of locations. And I also let you know, if you would like to have your pictures shared with me, you can either tag me in an Instagram post or a Facebook post. That is a quick way for me to see your image and be able to respond to it and include it in the slideshow. Or you can email me directly with any images that you would like to share, depending on what you are most comfortable with getting me your image. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first question was a question that was asked to me via a Facebook Live that I did a while back, and I didn't know the answer, so I researched it and I have the answer ready for this question now. So Gina asked me, what is the difference between 100% cotton yarn and mercerized cotton yarn? They are both a 4-weight yarn, and she asks, do I need to use a different hook? Now, I wasn't quite sure, but after doing the research on what mercerized means, I'm super excited to try out some mercerized yarn. So mercerized is a process generally done to cotton yarn, hemp yarn, or a linen yarn. That is primarily what type of materials will be mercerized. And mercerized is just a process done to this fiber to make it more absorbent, stronger, softer, and also lint resistant, so it doesn't like lint out so much. What it'll do if you mercerize your cotton, if you mercerize your linen, is it'll make it more absorbent, which means if you color this yarn, it will accept more color, be a deeper, richer color, and then it'll also hang on to that color longer. So if you wash it, it won't, the color will retain. It won't bleed out, fade out, if that makes any sense. Which means you'll be left with a much richer color in the material. So if you see a mercerized cotton yarn, you'll probably notice that the color range for them is greater than a normal cotton yarn. Also, like it says, it is softer and reduces lint and resistant to mildew as well. And what else do I have here? It's increased in luster, it's increased strength and smoothness. So overall, the quality of the yarn that is mercerized is going to be much nicer. It's going to be much greater, which also means it will probably be a little more pricey, but it is worth it for the quality that you're going to get out of this yarn. So I'm excited to even try. I bet I have a mercerized yarn. I just never recognized the word mercerized. So now that I know what it means, I'm actually like, I want to play with one now. But when it comes to the size, if the mercerized cotton yarn that you have and the 100% cotton yarn that you have are both a size 4 weight, I would stick with the same crochet hook. Really, the crochet hook I would mess with or change sizes with if the size of the yarn was different, but keeping with the same size yarn, I would use the same size crochet hook. Also, because the cotton yarn, it says it's smoother and more lustrous. I don't think those qualities would really affect how I would, the crochet hook size that I would use. So I would just stick with the same crochet hook size that you would use for either one. I wouldn't change the size. All right, I hope that helps, Gina, because now I am super excited to give that a try. Next question is from Sharon with Stitches by Sharon. Sharon asks, or says, I'm curious as to the process of designing a pattern, especially for clothing. How do you do the math to determine the different sizes? And then she goes on to say that she's not very good with numbers and she can't imagine what math is involved in creating different sizes. Thank you in advance. So I'm really excited to share with you, all of you, what I have learned in the process of designing patterns. Now, when it comes to patterns, I usually would design something more simple, like a blanket or a scarf or even a beanie, something of that nature. But the more I have grown on YouTube, the more projects I have played with, the more I'm wanting to make, especially clothing, the more I am learning in what is required of these things, such as sizes and patterns, with crochet patterns I am using. So I'm going to be sharing with everybody what I have learned and how I do what I do when I'm making my items, what things I look for. And honestly, a lot of that I'm going to be sharing next year come 2023, just so that way I can really get it dialed in, and I want to share all that with you. And not just me making something, but showing you how I make things. That way I can empower you to create your own patterns. So I'm getting a lot of those questions asked of me, like a lot of people wanting to make their own patterns, a lot of you super inspired, amazing, creative people that are like, okay, I want to move on to the next step and I don't know how. So I'm going to share with you what I know coming 2023. But generally what I do is, depending on what I want to make, I look to see if there is some kind of sizing chart or sizing diagram first. I'll Google, or I'll go on Pinterest, or I will, those are the big two places that I go. You can generally find a sizing chart from one of those locations. So let's just, for example, say a shawl. Okay, just as an example, if I wanted to make a shawl, I would go find the diagram sizing chart for a shawl, and that will tell me generally what width and what length a shawl needs to be to fit appropriately on somebody. There is a chart for it. Surprisingly enough, there is a chart for it. And so that will at least guide me, okay, depending on if I want to make this shawl like not so wide, maybe like go widthwise, but then go back and forth, row by row, and make it really, really long. That's the pattern I want to use. Or if I want to make my shawl starting really, really wide and then only go long ways, like short, long ways, depending on how you want to work your shawl, really long or really short and really tall. Knowing what dimension you need to chain out or crochet to widthwise and lengthwise to hit dimension. Once you know how to hit dimension, then figure out what pattern you want to use, what crochet pattern. Okay, I want to use, say, a fan or a shell stitch. The fan / shell stitch have multiple stitch count requirements. You have to have so many chains, so many stitches in your row to make it fit, to make it work. You know what I mean? You don't want to just randomly chain out and then you get to the end, you come back on row 1 and you have this weird leftover amount of chains, like you have 2 chains just randomly left over and you're like, I don't know what to do with this. This looks awkward and weird. You don't want to do that. You want your pattern to fit perfectly so that way it looks neat, clean, and organized, and it looks like it was meant to stop there. You don't have this weird overhang. You know what I mean? So knowing the multiple stitch count requirement is very important. Then working that multiple stitch count requirement making sure everything hits widthwise and then going lengthwise, however many rows you need to hit that dimension. So that, again, is just an example, make it easier to explain than, say, talking about a women's top. But I always start by first looking, are there sizing charts for a woman's top? What bust will be what size, generally, like a general thing. What length would be a general size for a woman's top? It would all be included in the chart, the sizing chart. Okay, and then I would just work with that. And then, like I said, in the upcoming year, I'm going to show you, okay, now, if you want to make a woman's top, here are the things, the pieces, the parts that you want to take into consideration. Here's how you join them together, blah, blah, blah. So I am looking forward to that a lot. And there are people wanting different patterns, such as beanies, different size beanies, how to focus on that, different size scarves, different size blankets, different, you know, all the different projects that you can make and how to figure out how to make a pattern for it. And so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, start with the diagram, then work with the stitch count requirement, and then just hit dimension, basically. Hopefully that helps, Sharon, or at least gets you started in a good direction. All right, next question is Ocean Girl 505. Hey Tiffany, please explain what roving yarn is. Over the years, I've heard it described in very different ways, and I am clueless. Thank you for all that you do for us. Oh, well, thank you so much. So I am there with you, Ocean Girl 505. When it comes to roving, I've even identified it in the sizing category, and so in my regards, I probably explained it a little rough in a previous video when I was talking about different yarn sizes. And I think I did that because when it comes to roving yarn is like an unfinished yarn. We've all seen it in Michael's, Joann's, a yarn store, Hobby Lobby. It is that yarn that it looks like it looks like just strips of wool, like somebody didn't finish it. And it's generally jumbo sized yarn because it comes in like these thick strips, and it's a material like a wool. It can be a cotton, it can be really any fiber that all goes in one direction, but it generally looks like wool that hasn't been finished yet. And I have a picture here so that way you can have an idea of what it is, or if you Google images of roving yarn, you'll get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. But whenever I've seen roving yarn, it's generally been a size 7 jumbo yarn or a thicker yarn, not generally a thin yarn, though it does exist, because all roving yarn is an unfinished yarn. And meaning it hasn't been twisted. It hasn't gone through the spinner yet to be spun into what we would recognize as normal yarn that we see in our skeins or our cakes, you know, at the store already kind of pretty packaged. So that is what roving yarn is. It's yarn or material that hasn't reached that last step. You can purchase it as roving, and it works up really, really pretty. Again, generally I see it as the size 7, but that's all roving yarn is. It's just yarn you can buy that hasn't reached that last step where it's been spun into something that we generally recognize. So hopefully that helps. I know it helped me. And I have avoided using it just because it doesn't, whenever I see roving yarn, what I have seen in the store previously, it generally doesn't come with very much quantity in the skein or however it's presented. It doesn't come with very much. So I know that whatever I'd be using I'd need a lot of it. And so I've kind of avoided those projects because I know I would need a lot of that material, and working with it will be a little bit different than working with a normal yarn. So it probably would look gorgeous. It's just I haven't given it a whole lot of thought or played with it yet. Though I probably should, just so I can show everybody roving yarn, like actually show people and then do a project with it. Be fun to play. All right, next question is Line Dancer. The question is, a little less than a month ago, I purchased one of your patterns on Etsy. Love your work. Oh, thank you so much. What is your favorite brand of crochet hook? So I've mentioned this before previously in some of the other Q&As. My favorite brand of crochet hook to use is just a general Boy crochet hook, B-O-Y-E. It's the brand. I learned off of Boy, and I've heard from multiple people that I've talked to, generally your favorite crochet hook that you use is the one that you practiced with, the one you started with, or eventually graduated to if you didn't like what you started with. But for me, I really like long, slender, so all really thin crochet hook, aluminum. I like the weight of aluminum crochet hooks a lot. And I like the shaft of the crochet hook. So that is the part between the point of the head and the claw or the hook and the thumb hold. I like that section of the crochet hook to be long and thin because the way I make my crochet stitches, I like to have more room to work with there. Having a short spot there, a really short shaft there, it bothers me. Like it just doesn't give me enough room and I feel stunted. And I prefer to have the longer shaft, though many people have different things that they like and are comfortable with. I don't know if it's because I crochet with a pencil hold opposed to a knife hold. So I don't know if the way I hold my crochet hook affects how I like my crochet hook. Not sure. All I know is those are my favorite to work with. I can work really fast with them and make really pretty stitches with them. So that's just what I enjoy. And what's funny is the Boy crochet hook, or the type of crochet hook that I enjoy, is like the cheapest baseline brand. So it's nothing fancy. I don't spend a lot of money on my crochet hooks, but that's just what I enjoy and am most comfortable with. All right, next question is Sandra O'Connor. Sandra asks, hi Tiffany, I was wondering which of your patterns for a blanket or which stitch would you recommend to make a throw for a twin or single sized blanket using the least amount of yarn? Thanks so much in advance for answering my question. Okay, so you're wanting to make a pretty large blanket. We're going for one that will cover an actual adult size bed, a twin size bed. And you're wanting to use the least amount of yarn as possible. So honestly, I mean, first of all, just understand that the size of the blanket you're wanting to make, you're going to be using a lot of yarn in general. So knowing that, just be prepared. You're not going to get away making a twin size blanket with 4 skeins of yarn. Even unless those skeins are like those huge skeins, okay? You're just put it in your head, you're not going to be using 4 skeins of yarn, okay? So even if we are using a crochet stitch that will use the least amount of yarn, you're still going to need a significant number of skeins to complete that size of a project, okay? I think I answered this question on YouTube already for you, but just to kind of throw that out there for anyone else looking, if you're wanting to use less yarn for your project, there's a couple things that you can do. One, go up a crochet hook size. That way your stitches are larger and you're covering more surface area or space with your stitches. And 2, you're going to want to probably use a stitch that is not as dense and more spaced out in a sense. So I'm thinking of either using a mesh stitch, or I really like the idea of using the V-stitch, especially that double V-stitch that I just did a Technique Tuesday tutorial for. That would be a perfect stitch for you to use, Sandra, just because it will be beautiful. It'll have somewhat of a coverage. The pattern will cover some surface area, but it won't be a yarn eater. The double V stitch is not a yarn eater. But yeah, you're not going to want any stitch that's dense or completely covered in the sense of I would not use single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet stitch like consistent, because those are going to be still a decent yarn eater. I wouldn't use any shells. I wouldn't use any fans. I wouldn't use anything textured, because all of that is going to require more yarn to make that particular stitch. I mean, you could potentially use a fan stitch that has like a treble crochet. That way you're at least covering surface area over than big surface area over. But the more coverage your blanket will have, the more dense your blanket is, the more yarn you're going to need. So yeah, like I said, a mesh stitch, a V-stitch, even potentially like a really wide fan stitch that has like maybe a stitch, a chain, a stitch, a chain, a stitch, a chain, something like that, will be the least yarn eaters, and that is going to be my best suggestion for you. Honestly, I'm just going to go ahead and keep raving about the double V-stitch. Will probably be a really great option for you when it comes to using the least amount of yarn. All right, so that's my thought process there. And then also, the thicker the yarn that you use, the more surface area it will cover, but also the thicker the yarn, the more skeins you're going to need, because the yarn will run out faster, but you're also covering more area faster. So it's up to you on what you want to do and the cost of the yarn and your budget and what you're going for. All right, so honestly, if you could get away with, Cassandra, if you could get away with using a size 5 weight bulky yarn, if you could do that and use that V-stitch, I think you'd be able to work up a single sized or single bed sized blanket pretty quickly with a least amount of yarn. So quick and least amount of yarn right there. Hopefully that helps. Okay, next question is Samantha. Hi, Tiffany. Right now I'm working on granny squares. Awesome. I sent pictures. Oh, I probably included them in the slideshow if I got them. What is your favorite crochet project to work on right now? So what am I working on right now? Okay, so right now I am actually working on, so this is actually kind of a fun update. What am I working on right now? So I am working on a really, really pretty fall poncho, and that one will be using the really fancy, beautiful yarn that I bought from the chick on Instagram, that beautiful fall yarn. But I got this yarn almost a year ago, and I've been working on the right project, and this is the right project. But I wanted also the colors to work out, and they're very fallish colors, so I wanted to release the video at the right time. That way it made sense. All right, next question is these creations. If you put a 1-weight yarn and a 3-weight yarn together, will it be a 4-weight? Thank you for letting us know and asking our questions. So hypothetically, it should work out. If you put a 1-weight with a 3-weight, just doing the math, it should become a 4-weight. However, it really depends on the width of the yarn that you're using. I don't know if you've ever run into working with, say, for example, a size 4-weight yarn, and you're buying all these different brands of yarn, but they're all the same size. I'll say the size 4-weight, but you're noticing that this brand's 4-weight is much thicker than this brand's 4-weight. So honestly, the same weight yarn can come off thin or thick, like a thick 4 or a thin 4. You know what I mean? I've definitely seen this a lot. So in that regard too, if you put together a 1 and a 3, it could come off as a 4 thin or 4 thick. You know, it really could. So give it a try. And what I recommend is, yeah, do it. Give it a try. Work up a few rows. And then what would be a really good idea is for you to take dimensions of what you just created following the pattern that you're following, and seeing if your work is matching the dimensions of the work of the pattern. So for example, if the pattern you're working is a blanket, okay, and the blanket size you're wanting to make, they're saying, is a 40-inch wide receiving blanket. Okay, just again, roll with me here for this example. If you're trying to make this blanket and the pattern says it's supposed to be 40 inches wide, and you put together your size 1 and size 3 weight yarn, and you work the same amount of stitches that they did, go about 4 rows up. That way you're making sure that it's actually turning out consistently this size, okay? Measure yours out, and if your work is measuring the same dimension that their work is, then awesome. Go with it. Just keep going. But if you're noticing that putting your 1 and 3 weight yarn together is causing your work to be much larger than their pattern is calling for, you might need to adjust the number of stitches that you're working with, so that way you can have the same size project that the pattern is calling for. Okay, so just watch your dimension to make sure it's working up the way you want it to. All right, Elizabeth, your question is, what is the best way to ensure that borders are even on parallel sides when the blanket stitches are not uniform or larger than the border stitches are? Thanks in advance. All right, cool. That is a great question. So the stitches of the blanket, the inner body of the blanket, are larger than the stitches you are making in the border. Okay. I had an answer, but now I'm like, okay, this question could be answered, or this question could be a different question than what I answered. Okay, so let me answer both versions of this question. So if the work that you are working on the inner body of your blanket was made with, say, a size 5 weight yarn, okay, so your stitches are all bulkier and larger, and the yarn that you're using for your border is a size 4 weight yarn, so it's a thinner yarn. If you're working a border and the stitches are made with a thinner yarn, then you are going to want to more so make sure that your border is laying flat than making sure you are putting the same equal number of stitches in each stitch space or the side of each row. Okay, so focus more on making sure the border is laying flat and that it's not scrunching up the inner body of the blanket because it's so tight and it's just kind of like going like that. And you also don't want to have so many stitches in the border that it's rippling and fanning and all of a sudden it's like doing this weird warp thing, okay? So what I would do, foundation row of your border, do a single crochet stitch, okay? When it comes to the top of your blanket and the bottom of your blanket, make a stitch in the first stitch space, and then the second stitch, see if it'll fit or how it looks in the second stitch space. Okay, make a single crochet in the first stitch space, single crochet in the second stitch space. When you do that, does it stretch out those stitches and it pulls the blanket in a little bit? Does it, are they looking cramped and it looks like it's starting to fan out? Like, how do those first 2 stitches look? Do you need to put 2 stitches in the same stitch space? So make 2 single crochet stitches in the first stitch space. Okay, work with those first 2 stitches. How are they feeling? Then work the next stitch. How is it feeling? Round 1, the foundation round of your blanket border is really you establishing the border. It can really be, I need to put 2 stitches in the first stitch and then 1 stitch in the second, and then 2 stitches in the third stitch, 1 stitch in the fourth. You know, whatever you need to do to make sure that that blanket border lays flat and that the inner body blanket is also laying flat. Nothing is being squished, nothing is being ruffled. Okay, so just more so focus on that it's laying flat. Now, if the question were meaning I am making larger stitches in my blanket than the stitches that I'm making in the border. So for example, I have a row of treble crochets, but my border is all single crochet stitches. If that's what you're referring to, the stitch itself is larger, like the treble, opposed to the border. Then focus on the sides of your blanket. If you're working the sides of your blanket, making a border, you will make one single crochet stitch. If the side of the blanket, the last stitch is a slip stitch or a single crochet stitch or a half double crochet stitch. Slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, get one single crochet in the side of that row. The double crochet stitch gets 2 single crochet stitches in the side of that row. A treble crochet stitch will get 3 single crochet stitches in the side of that row. And a double treble crochet stitch will get 4 single crochet stitches in the side of that row. Okay, I hope that helps. I do want to do a whole thing on blanket borders and helping out with that. It's coming. There's so much I want to do with you guys, so much I want to, tutorials I want to teach you guys. It's just getting to them. There's so much. So I hope that helps you, Elizabeth. Tammy, I want to make a waffle stitch afghan, but no idea how many chains to start with. You want to make a blanket for a bed, a throw for her bed. Awesome question. Okay, so I actually have 2 videos that are going to help you a lot, Tammy. One is I did a video on the waffle stitch. So what you want to do, Tammy, is you want to figure out what the multiple stitch count requirement is for the waffle stitch. That way you know how many stitches, how many chains you need to make in your foundation row to make the size blanket that you want to make. And then I also made a video that is called How Many Stitches Do I Need, or How Many Chains Do I Need to Make That Blanket? And it helps anyone figure out how to meet blanket dimension for any size blanket they want to make, as long as it's a rectangle or a square size blanket. Okay. If it's like a circle, it won't work. It won't apply. It just won't. Or if it's a corner to corner, it won't apply. It really won't, because those are done differently. But if it's a square or rectangle size blanket, this video is going to be great, because it's going to tell you how to take that multiple stitch count requirement that you need to make the waffle stitch, and how to take that count and reach that size blanket you want to make. Okay, so I will put links to these videos, both these videos, the waffle stitch and the how many chains do I need video, in the description section and comment section of this video. So it's a quick click that link and shoots you straight to that video. All right, next question is Rihanna Run. Will you make more tutorials on crochet tops? Yes, I am loving making tops. The only thing is that tops take a while. They take a hot second to, one, design, and to create, because it's ultimately like, it's almost like making a blanket in a way, because you're making 2 panels generally and putting them together. And so that's just a lot of time. It's time consuming. So, but I am enjoying them. I love making tops, and I love wearing the tops that I make. All right, NL Weston 17. What magazine would I suggest for a subscription? Great question. Actually, I currently don't have any magazine subscriptions, though I'm kicking myself in the butt, because I should. I should have magazine subscriptions, because they let you know what is popular, they let you know what is coming, they let you know what projects or people are most interested in right now, the colors that are super popular. They let you know a lot of information. And even if you don't want to make necessarily the projects that are in those magazines, they give you a lot of help in the colors and in what season is coming up, and maybe inspiring you to take what they did and do something else with it. So there's a lot of inspiration with magazines. And honestly, my favorite magazine type that I seem to fluctuate to the most is Annie's. Annie's magazine. I really love their holiday editions. I really love their home editions. Those are my favorite. They just always have such fun projects, and they're ones that I seem to be most drawn to and attracted to. So yes, I do need to get my own magazine subscriptions. I really do. It's just a matter of just doing it. All right, next question is Sammy Stewart 161. What type of yarn to use when doing mosaic blanket projects? All right, so if you're making a mosaic blanket project, you need the pattern to be the star of the show, not the yarn. So go with a very simple yarn. Oh, Bella, are you having a dream? I have my puppy over here, my Great Dane Bella right here, and she's like sleeping and kicking her feet, and I can tell that she's dreaming. It's super cute. So when you're making a mosaic blanket, you want the blanket to be the star of the show. You want the pattern to be the star of the show because there's going to be a lot of detail. There's going to be a lot of, again, pattern drawing your attention. You could literally do a mosaic blanket all in the same color and allow the pattern to be the star of the show. And you really should. If you're going to change color, the color changes should be to accentuate the different patterns happening in the mosaic. It shouldn't compete. You really should never use a color changing yarn when it comes to a mosaic, because then there's going to be too much change happening, too much detail, too much going on, and it's actually going to be very distracting and unpleasant to the eye. So I would use a solid yarn that's non-textured, probably a size 3 or 4 weight yarn. That way you can actually see the detail. If you go too thick with the yarn, you'll lose a lot of detail. If you go too thin with your yarn, you're going to lose a lot of detail because it'll be either so thick that you miss detail, or it'll be so thin that it's too spaced out and you're missing detail. Okay, so a size 3 or size 4 is probably going to be your sweet spot there. And when it comes to mosaics, using yarn that complements the colors that complement each other. But that is what I would probably focus on when making a mosaic. I got a question from Cowgirl Caroline Rose. Favorite brand t-shirt yarn? So I want to use t-shirt yarn. I want to play with t-shirt yarn. I actually have thought about it and already have ideas of what projects I would make with t-shirt yarn. I want to make mats. I want to make rugs. I want to make baskets. I think these would be awesome projects because t-shirt yarn, it's thick and it's strong, and it just would hold up really well with those projects, and yet still be kind of squishy and comfortable. So I haven't played with it yet, but if I were to play with it, I found a yarn on Amazon, a t-shirt yarn on Amazon. It's called Fox Yarn, and I'll put the link to it in the description section, comment section below if you'd like to check it out also. That is the yarn that I would play with because the colors are yummy, and it's a good price. It's not overly priced. So yeah, that's what I would play with. And like I said, I already have ideas. I just haven't done it yet. Next question. Yinaljo. Question is, hi, have you dealt with wrist pain due to over crocheting? If yes, how did you take care of it? So yes, I often have issues with my wrists when it comes to over crocheting, just because I do a lot of crocheting. And if I know that I'm going to be working consistently on a project, I will make sure I do the crochet stretches. I actually made a video a long time ago on different crochet stretches that you can do, that I do. And I'll put the link to that video in the description. I'll have a lot of information in the description section below this video to help you guys out. But that video will really help you to prevent or to help treat some of those things in your wrists. And honestly, some of them is just like taking your thumb, bending your hand this way, and like putting your other hand here, pushing with your thumb against your wrist, having your elbow bent, and then stretching your elbow out. This is a great stretch that I do all the time, and hold it. And then I'll do it with the other wrist as well, and hold it. And that's a great stretch. And then I'll do the reverse where I'll put, instead of the hand out, I'll put it down, hold it, have it start bent, and then I'll push it out. And I'll do the same thing with the other side. Do that right now. Everybody that's watching this video, do that right now. Thumb, hand, make it top, elbow bent, and then straighten it out. That's going to affect everything on this side of your arm. Do that on both sides. I know it sounds weird, but do it on both sides. And then reverse. Again, start with your elbow bent and then straighten it, and that will stretch everything on this side of your arm. Those are my favorite go-tos. Next, I will do the arm stretch out, where I do a T and out, and really opens up your chest area, because a lot of times we're crocheting like this, and it can hurt your back, and it can hurt your front, and just kind of opening it up like this feels great. And then move your thumbs back down, and then you'll feel it here in your arm. It feels so good. Then another one that I'll do is I'll take my fingers, make my hand, and I'll kind of pull them back a little bit. Not for very long, but if you give it a try, you'll feel it. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I never even knew. Even the thumb, both sides. And you'll feel that all down your forearm, which is crazy. You'll feel it all down your forearm and all in the places that we will just kind of, all in that wrist area, and then do, wrist rolls, those kind of things. Those are my favorite go-to stretches that I will do all the time. And again, if you know you're about to crochet a lot, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I got a lot I'm about to do right now. Do your stretches before you get started. Periodically throughout the process, pause, give yourself a quick stretch, and then keep going. If it starts to hurt, pause, definitely. Do some stretches. If it's still hurting, see your doctor and just kind of get a little checkup. Make sure it's not carpal tunnel. Make sure you're not doing any serious damage to your wrists, and working this consecutively all the time. You want to make sure you don't overwork yourself, okay? I know that's easy to do, especially when we have lots of fun things that we need to make, gifts that we need to accomplish for a certain due date, or even like if we are doing a lot of charity work and we have a lot of projects we want to do, we want to just crochet constantly, and we just need to make sure we take a second to take care of our bodies, so that way we can keep crocheting in the long run and it doesn't stop us. Our wrists don't stop us. So great question. There's a lot more, many more stretches that I do in that video too. It's a great video and I hope you watch it. Next question, Sammy Stewart 161. Does the turning stitch count as a stitch in single crochet? Generally, no. Generally, the turning chain is specifically just for turning, and it doesn't actually count as a stitch. But I have seen very few patterns where it does, where they count it as a stitch. So one, refer to the pattern. The pattern will tell you, it should be very specific on if that counts or not. As a stitch, the turning chain counts as a stitch or not, but generally, most of the time, it does not. All right, unless, like I said, when it comes to single crochet, generally not. Generally not. But if it's like a half double crochet or a double crochet stitch and you're skipping 2 chains, sometimes those skipped chains count as your first stitch. But again, the pattern will say, it will specify. Next question. What project should I do next after my granny square blanket? Okay, what I will do, and that's my last question here. What I will do after I make a blanket is my next project will generally be a smaller project. A quick win is what I call it. Because blankets can take a long time, especially depending on the size of the blanket, the detail of the blanket, what went into the blanket. They can take a lot of time, and when you finish it, it feels great because finished projects give you this sense of accomplishment, euphoria, just feeling really just proud of yourself, grateful that you've completed something. There's just a whole lot of positive feeling that goes into completing a project. But if you are going from one big project to the next big project to the next big project, you're going too far between those feelings of euphoria, happy, accomplished, wins. Yay, I finished it. The gratification. You're going too far between those gratifications, and you may lose your crochet, or you may lose your motivation to make your next project. But if you can go from big project to, oh, quick win, quick win, quick win, big project, quick win, quick win, quick win, which means quick project, quick finish, quick project, quick finish. You'll get those happy, excited feelings, happy, excited feelings, happy, excited feelings that keep your motivation high, keep your love for crochet high, keep your motivation to make the next thing high, and then go into your next big project feeling highly motivated and excited to work on this large project that's going to take you a while to complete. So that's what I would do. If you just came off of a blanket, next few projects, say 2-3 projects, have them be a quick project, like a washcloth or a keychain or a small stuffed animal, like maybe my little giraffe, or even something small like a pot holder, or, you know, something quick win, and then build yourself up to your next blanket. So those are all of the questions. I had so much fun answering them. I hope that you found them helpful. Again, a lot of the information required some links to either information or videos for extra help, and I'll put all of those in the description section and comment section below this video. Now let's go ahead and dive right into that slideshow. I'm so glad that you made it to this point in the video, and I hope you enjoy.